They're just well known. But they'd go out for like a bowl of soup after church on Saturday morning, something.
Yeah.
I think that's you, Tom.
That was Tom.
Are we good? All right.
Very literal.
All right. Okay, I'm going to call this meeting to order. Has the meeting been properly noticed, Carolyn?
It has.
Thank you very much. And before we continue, I'm going to briefly go over the guidelines for the in-person meeting today. For those who are in attendance in person, we ask that you adhere to the following. Masks must be worn at all times. Social distancing of 6 feet must be strictly maintained unless next to members of your immediate household. To ensure 6 feet distancing, capacity is limited. Once we meet capacity in accordance with Public Health Madison and Dane County requirements, we will restrict entry. Eating is not permitted. Please sit only in the areas where permitted and as directed by ushers. And unfortunately, failure to abide by these requirements will result in removal from the meeting. So we appreciate your adherence to these guidelines. And with that, we can move to public comment. If there are those who are attending in person who would like to provide comment to the board, please feel free to approach the microphone up here to the front to your left. And please state your name and address. All right, I don't see any public comment in person. I'll just confirm with Dean and Tamara that we do not have any submissions for this meeting for public comment via email.
To the best of my knowledge, we did not receive any. Is that correct, Tamara?
Okay, thank you very much. And with that, we can move on to item C, recognition of our board members who are leaving the board. So Dean, would you like to kick that off?
Sure, I'd be happy to. So Steve, is this one live? Hello? Okay, thank you. All right, well, tonight I want to recognize our 2 outgoing board members for all the years of service that they have given to the Verona Area School District and sitting at these board tables for so many meetings. So Carolyn, thank you for your 3 years of service on the board. So I want anybody that's listening, watching out there to understand the dedication that our board members give to this service. And Carolyn is a mom of 4, so she's busy to begin with. And the fact that you would take so much time of your personal time to spend on behalf of the 5,700 other children in our school district, I want to say thank you for that. So we've got you a little plant over there and some treats. And by the way, we have enough for every one of your members of your family, so don't leave without taking one for each. And also, Carolyn, we have this little gift, a little certificate of appreciation for your 3 years on the board. So thank you very much for everything that you've done. So some highlights. I think we built a new high school. I think we went through boundary changes. You've hired a new superintendent, and we've had a year of COVID. So I think your 3 years is the equivalent of maybe 30 years.
It was not uneventful.
Very well said. So Carolyn, on behalf of the administrative team who's here tonight and those who aren't, I want to say thank you for everything you've done, and on behalf of all the teachers too who aren't in attendance today, thank you so much for everything you've done.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you.
And on this side, Mr. Tom Durst. So Tom was on the board when I was hired back in 2005 and started before that. And so Tom has been on the board board for a total of 15 years between two different stints. I think you did, what, 9 and 6? Is that how that worked out? And I think one of the motivating factors for Tom to get on the board, if I recall, was boundaries. And I think that motivated you. And so you've lived through a few boundary changes. You lived through a few building projects and a year of COVID and everything in between. So, Tom, what we have for you is, it's not here, but I want you to picture a tree about 2-inch diameter that we are going to have you decide where you want to place that in honor of your service on the board for 15 years. And of course, we got this little thing here for you too, as well as a couple of other goodies. So, Tom, we asked folks to put together some things that they remember about you. And so, Tom, I'd just like to present this to you tonight for your reading enjoyment. There are some funny stories in there, as you might guess. And then Kathy Peelage, who served on the board several years ago, convinced Tom and his wife to go curling with her and her husband. Now, Kathy Peelage is a accomplished curly person. So Tom went, and she wanted you to have this Curl USA pin also. So that's from Kathy Peelage as well. So Tom, that tree, we didn't want to, you know what we've learned in this moving process is don't move things more than you have to. So you'll let us know where you want us to put that, and we will plant that in your honor. So Tom, on behalf of the administrative team, on behalf of the 5,700 kids in the school district, on behalf of the 900 plus staff, I want to say thank you. On behalf of all the taxpayers and citizens of the Verona Area School District, I want to say thank you for 15 years of exemplary service to the school district. Thank you, Tom. And Tom asked that we make this a short meeting tonight, and hopefully we can honor Tom in that.
I'd like to just say a few words. It has been a tremendous honor to be elected 5 times to this board. It's just a tremendous honor. It meant a lot to me to be reelected in competitive races. It meant that you had a choice and you still chose me. To my wife, Lynn, who provided me balance. There isn't a political bone in that girl's body. And when I'd be fretting about stuff, she would just talk to me like a normal person. What is a normal person thinking? And it just helped me keep balance in my life. To the person who made my walking away so much easier, when they asked me, why did you run? What did you want to accomplish? And did you accomplish that? It like it took the weight of the world off my shoulders, because I had accomplished what I went out to do on this board, and it made it so much easier to walk away. Leaving the board in 2009, I wasn't sure I was done with public service. And my family at the time were in their 20s, going through the changing process of life, trying to get their feet underneath them, and our 4 kids. And they were very normal. And in 2021, now my kids are all in their 30s. And my wife and I are extremely proud of how they've turned out. And a large part of that goes to the staff at the Verona School District, who helped give them their base. And so if you touched any of my 4 children, you should be very proud of what you accomplished with those 4. My wife and I are, and you should be too. And finally, somebody told me, when you're in a position of power in the same place for a long time, friends come and go, but enemies accumulate. I can't speak for enemies because I can't say I've really accumulated them, but I have accumulated a lot of friends while serving on the board. And I deeply, deeply love that. I mean, I just so appreciate the friends that I have made on this board. So thank you to everybody.
Thank you so much, Tom. And thank you, Dean, for the presentation. I'll try and live up to Tom's request of being brief, but I do want to extend my sincere gratitude to both Tom and Carolyn for their service. As Dean mentioned, it feels like we've tackled 15 years worth of board work in the last 3 alone. So Tom, that puts you up near 30. And I know we've tackled a lot of controversial and intense issues, and I knew I could always count on you two to bring a unique and valuable perspective to each conversation. And your dedication to our students is just abundantly clear in your work over the last few years and this last year in particular. So it has been an immense pleasure to work alongside you, and I wish you the best as you attempt to figure out what to do with all this free time that you'll have. So thank you both very much.
Tom and Carolyn, I just want to say it has been an honor to serve on this board with you both. And the greatest compliment I can give to both of you is that everything that you've done on this board has been putting children first. And you've done that with every vote, every issue, and you've put in more hours than anyone in our community will ever know. It has been an honor to serve with you both, and you will be very, very missed.
I'm going to pile on a few more compliments, if you don't mind. Every board member that comes to this table brings a different lens, a little different view of things. I've never thought, oh, shouldn't have that person on the board. I've always thought, oh, I've not heard that point of view before. I appreciate that. Tom, it's been a great pleasure. Whenever I was unsure about a topic or I hadn't made a decision, I loved that you always knew. By the time you got to the table, you had a pretty good idea of what you believed in and what you wanted to do and why. And that helped me make a lot of my choices and my decisions. So for that, I'm very grateful. And Carolyn, I appreciate the way that you come to the table with great questions, help me understand processes. Sometimes I can't think of the questions I want to ask, and I appreciate how you ask yours. So thank you very much. Thank you both. I appreciate you.
Yeah, thank you. Okay.
Sometimes I can't think of the questions I want to ask, and I appreciate how you ask yours. So thank you very much. Thank you both. Appreciate you.
Thank you. Okay.
Sometimes I can't think of the questions I want to ask, and I appreciate how you ask yours. So thank you very much. Thank you both. Appreciate you.
In the meantime, Corey brought his bass and he's going to just play a little bit for us tonight, right? There you go.
Okay, can you hear me? I will be the detached voice from afar saying thank you to Carolyn and Tom for all of their service on the board. This is Christina. I'm sorry I'm not there in person, but I just want to say that I greatly respect the time that you gave to your board service and that you both had some very valuable input And it's always helped me, as others have said, to kind of shape my perspective and think about things in a different way. So thank you for all of your dedication. And I wish I could be there to just express my gratitude to both of you.
Not a speakerphone or? Oh, my.
Okay, does she want to say something again? Okay.
Oh, wow. Okay, well, why don't we move on?
Hey,
and,
Noah.
Yeah,
Can I just,
sure.
let me pile on.
Yeah.
Uh, I just want to thank each and every one of you on the board and the administration. I've learned so much over the last 3 years from each and every one of you about our schools and how running schools works. And it's been a real education, and I've enjoyed every minute of it. Well, maybe not every minute, but most of the minutes I've enjoyed. And I've definitely enjoyed getting to know all of you so much and all of the work that you do for our students. I'm speaking to the staff now as I'm looking at them. You are all such professionals who give and give of your time to make the Verona School District better every day. And it's greatly appreciated. And to our incoming school board members, I know you're going to do a great job and provide, an incredible voice to our students and our families and our staff. And I wish you the best of luck. And Tom, I will miss these times together, but while they're all sitting here, we'll go have a drink.
Thank you very much, Carolyn. And I do hope to see or experience at least 1 or 2 adversarial public comment moments during my last year on the board too. So I'd like to request that you come back at least once. So. All right. I think if Christina wants to add something later, we can figure out how to add that in later. But why don't we carry on with our agenda and we can move to announcements. Are there any announcements from the board? Dean?
Oh, I had one.
Okay.
Just that, apologies, but I have no childcare tonight, so I may have to leave early unless we keep the pace up. But just want to let you know if I'm leaving early, it's because I have to take my kids home to bed.
Thank you very much. Any other announcements?
None for me, Noah.
Okay. Thank you. Well, we can move on to board business. We'll consider approval of the consent agenda items. It looks like we have minutes and we have some personnel items. Is there any discussion on any of these items? Last call for any discussion on these individual items. Hearing no discussion, I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda. If there isn't an objection, this motion will be adopted. Are there any objections? Last call for any objections. Hearing none, the consent agenda is approved and we can move to item B and review fourth quarter operations. Dean?
Thank you, Noah. And what the board just approved in consent agenda, there were included 2 administrative resignations. So Lori Burgos, who is in the audience tonight, is leaving us to assume the position of superintendent of the Evansville School District. And we want to say thank you to Lori for her 7 years of just exemplary service to the Verona Area School District. Tremaine, I'm glad that I don't have to be there when she's not there. So she's awesome. And Peng Li is going to assume the position of principal of DeForest Area High School. So he lives in DeForest and he will be about a 2-minute drive from his home. And so he has done just an outstanding job at the high school as one of our assistant principals. And we're going to deeply miss him also. And I talked with him briefly today, and he's very excited for his new position, but he is going to miss the friendships that he's formed here. So I wanted to say thank you to both of our outgoing, awesome people. So let's move on to talk a little bit, as we have been doing all year. We'll give an update for the board. I sent this this presentation to you also, board members. So if you want to follow along on there, that'd be great. And we'll advance the slides here on the big screen. So last Tuesday, we welcomed our students back. Tuesday through Friday in a non-hybrid situation. And so we've got a lot more kids in our schools and on our buses and our playgrounds than we've had all year. And it just feels real good. It feels very good. And so our teachers, our principals, and all of our support staff have just, I don't know how many iterations they've been through this year. I want to say at least 4, but they continually rise to the level and meet the challenge, and they have just done an outstanding job. So the structure of the update tonight is very similar to what we've done: attendance, and talk about fourth quarter, and a little bit, spend a little bit more time about some data from public health as it pertains to virus infections and so forth. And we'll spend maybe a little bit more time than we have in the last about transportation and summer school and planning for next year. So this is a slide that you've seen several times before. We've just kind of updated the weeks. Again, the attendance is held more or less steady across the entire time. And so that's been encouraging to see that. Communication protocol for positive case. Now that we have more students in the building, it's very likely, and you'll see that borne out in the data, that we're going to have more students in quarantine because they are considered a close contact. So throughout this whole pandemic, public health has not changed the definition of a close contact. I presume it will at some point, hopefully for next fall, but I don't see that happening through the end of this school year. So just again, a close contact is defined as a person that's 6 feet or closer for a cumulative 15 minutes within a 24-hour period. So it doesn't have to be 15 minutes straight. It could be, the accumulation of 15 minutes within a 24-hour period. And so what our protocol will be in terms of communication is, so if there's a positive test in a classroom, the families of the student that are in that classroom will be notified by the site secretary. And then if a student is deemed to be a close contact to the person that tested positive, those families will be contacted by the nurse or our contact tracers directly. So 2 forms. If you're in a classroom where there's a positive case, you'll get notification. If your child is a close contact, you'll get another notification from a nurse or a contact tracer. And they'll include additional instructions. And again, you'll see here shortly that as we anticipated, when we have more in and they are closer than 6 feet, we are going to have more students in quarantine. So I want to share with you some data. This is directly from Public Health. So Public Health, Madison-Dane County, they have been doing meetings all year long. They're down to, so Dane County Emergency Management does a meeting on the 1st and the 3rd Monday of the month. Public Health, Madison-Dane County does a meeting every Thursday, and that's for the school group. So this information came directly from their school notes. So they wanted to spend some time with us the last meeting last Thursday talking about pediatric trends, meaning 18 years and younger. Now remember, 16 and older are eligible for the Pfizer vaccine, and it's been encouraging to see that many more students in that age group have been getting vaccinated. But what we're seeing in Dane County is just an increase of people 18 and under contracting the virus. And so you can see there that 21 cases, 21% of the cases have been among people 18 and under. And that's in the last 2 weeks compared to the whole prior pandemic, which was 13%. And I won't bother to go through all of the data, but you can see there what the previous 2 weeks case numbers were by age group. And notably, the age 12 to 17 has gone up quite a bit. And they are really linking a lot of that to sports and to activities outside of school. And so they mentioned specifically girls volleyball teams. And so they provided some data about that. So, you know, the pandemic is not done. It's encouraging with the number of people getting vaccinated and so forth. But the cases have been on the rise. They're a little bit down today. But this is not the time to let our guard down, especially when we're in environments that are not nearly as controlled as the school settings. The school settings are not the source of transmission. So the next slide here is, so just some comparison data. You can see what Dane County is versus Wisconsin. They're almost identical, and they're lower than the US in general in VASD, and that comes right from the Department of Health Services census tract, is at 9.6 cases over 7-day average per 100,000. And you can see where we're at with the vaccination rates. Again, that's very encouraging to see that, especially with the 16 to 17-year-olds. Almost 5% of them have a full series already. And we haven't been keeping track of data about our staff specifically in terms of who's been vaccinated or not. But the CDC estimates that 80% of teaching staff, school staff, have been vaccinated. So this little bit of data here is, so the week of April 5th through the 9th, that was before we brought everybody back, or most everybody back. You can see isolation means they tested positive and they are isolating. Quarantine means they are close contact by that definition I gave. So we will just update this. So this is the week of the 12th through the 16th, last week. You could see that the number of people in quarantine went up quite a bit. And again, that is not by surprise. That takes us not by surprise at all. Just with more people closer together, there are going to be more close contacts. Now I'm going to turn this over to Angie to talk about the fourth quarter update.
Good evening. To Tom and Carolyn, congratulations and happy days. So we want to update you all on quarter four. We're really excited that we had an amazing reopening, revisit of all of our students that came back in. So option 1 students are now in for 4 days, and that's K-12. And so we almost want to say that it was anticlimactic, which was wonderful, that our students came and all the preparation that we did, showed forth. Our students came in with smiles on their faces, and we were able to offer them an amazing return. So our option 2 students are virtual, and so they are still being offered instruction concurrently. Our Mondays are non-instructional days. And so on Mondays, we're able to offer professional development for staff. Teachers are able to participate in grade level meetings. We're also able to have department meetings. And then at the secondary level, we're able to offer targeted instruction for students. We also want to share that we did offer an opportunity for our option 2 secondary students to return. We sent out 132 surveys to our students, inviting them to return. And of those 132, 17 students chose to return. So those students were given an opportunity to finish off the fourth quarter in school if they so chose.
And Angie, that was seniors, correct?
Seniors.
Yes.
So moving on to summer school. So we have 7 more weeks of school. So we're thinking about and planning for summer school. Our summer school site is Badger Ridge, and that's for elementary and middle school. And so we have 29 course offerings for our elementary students. We have 16 course offerings for our middle school students, and we have 25 course offerings for our high school students. We have a robust menu of choices for our students at the high school level. We've got things like band. We have courses in automotive tech. We also have AP prep. So many of the courses are for 0.5 credit. And then some of our other courses, for example, the AP prep is a non-credit course. However, it is preparing students for the AP courses. And then we also have courses that are invite only, that are targeting students that need just, need something extra to help them. We also want to say that summer school starts. The registration opens May the 7th. So parents will receive a brochure and they will be able to make their selection. And we anticipate that we will have a large summer school enrollment. We're anticipating that parents are going to want to send their children to summer school, and we're excited to welcome them. We want to share highlights of the fourth quarter reopening. So we have prepared a video montage. And as you watch this, please take note of all the smiling faces. Also take note of the strategies that have been put in place to keep all of our students safe. You'll notice that students are spaced as far apart as possible. In some classes, you'll see partitions, and all of these things have been done to keep our children safe, and we have done so successfully.
So board members, don't hit the play on your machine. Otherwise, we'll have a repeat of what we had at the beginning. So, okay, Tamara, if I hit you have to do that, right? Okay.
So those are highlights from the fourth quarter. And as you can see, we were successful at bringing our students back. What questions do you
Sorry.
have? If any. Thank you.
Thank you for getting some of our seniors back to school. I really appreciate it. This is Amy. I know it added a level of complexity, and for that, I'm very thankful that you gave them the option. I'm thankful you tried to find a workaround, and I'm glad it's only 17, so it doesn't feel quite as intimidating as 138. So thank you very much for all of your efforts.
All right, Tamara, I'm going to try to do this without starting this again. There we go. All right, transportation. John Bremer is here. So John, come on down. You're the next contestant on The Price is Right. So a little bit about John Bremer. So John and his wife teach in the district. John's been math teacher, infotech teacher for, gosh, how many years, John? 17, 18?
Here?
Yes.
This is 17, I believe.
17 years. And so
Let's just say I've been around long enough to coach Tom's boys.
there you go. Awesome. And then this year, John really stepped into the breach to help out on the operations side, and particularly as it pertains to transportation. So it's not one of the most glorious positions for sure, or glamorous, but as the saying goes, kids can't go to school if they can't get to school. So John, thank you for everything that you've done on the transportation needs, and I'll turn this over to you to give a little highlight.
Yeah, a lot of this is repetitive. The one thing that I want to, I guess, highlight to the community is that we are continuing to work on establishing buses that aren't so full, but as you can see, without more drivers, we're just not able to. We're not satisfied, if you will, with that, but it's where we're at currently, but it's not to say we're not trying. But that said, we continue to do things that have been successful the whole year in terms of mitigating risk, and to that effect, we've been super successful. So this is our bi-monthly plea for more drivers. That's what it's been here for the past months, and I don't see that ending even post-pandemic. The high school is utilizing Mondays for student, programming that ultimately supports students, and we're able to provide that transportation as well. So that feels pretty good. And I appreciate the thanks, Dean, but without Karen, without Brenda, without John, and all those drivers, it doesn't happen. So a special thanks to them. So if you have any questions,
Yeah.
we have data up here. So if you have any questions about that, I'm happy to answer what I can.
So last week we heard a few concerns from parents about the number of kids on buses, and we hear those. There are really very few options for us, right? It's not that we haven't been, John and Brenda and Rachel and everybody at Badger Bus been beating the bushes to get more drivers with a very lucrative signing bonus and so forth. It's a tough market, a really tough market. And so these slides here, I think 14 and 15 board members just give an update on the number of people that are assigned to ride and the actual average ridership. So those rarely match up. There's usually more assigned than ride. But it's more than what we would like. And if we had more drivers, we would address those situations. But again, this wasn't unanticipated.
Dean or John, what's the typical number of kids who can ride on a bus?
Pre-COVID, oh gosh, Carolyn, that can range greatly depending on the route length. And so pre-COVID, there could be 20 kids on a bus. There could be 68 kids on a bus. It really would depend. It would depend on the route that they were taking. It would depend on the time of the route that it took, because we have a constraint on how much time they can be wheels on the ground, as it were. But that would be a reasonable range, and sometimes it was even higher than 65.
Yeah, I think my question is more like, what's the capacity of a bus?
Oh,
Yeah, okay.
yeah, so that would range, like posted capacity, it depends on the bus, but a safe range would be 72 to 78. Some would be posted as 81.
So we're still significantly below like a full capacity bus.
Yeah, I mean, it assumes 3 people to a bus with the elementary school possible, but you try to put 3 seniors, which is probably rare. That's a very different look. But high school, like the high school ridership, lower than what we expected, but I'm not gonna really complain about that considering the age group.
So again, if you know of anybody who wants to drive a bus.
And I just want to add that for years, there has been a national shortage of CDL carrying drivers available for any number of jobs. Think about driving a semi, delivering for Amazon. All of those. This is not a new problem. It's an industry-wide problem, and it's only been complicated more by COVID. Thanks also, John, for making sure Badger Bus is keeping up with the windows down, which gives us 30 to 40 air exchanges per hour, which helps make the buses safer, even with more kids on them. Some parents also decided that they couldn't go without transportation, so that's why I think ridership is up a little bit. And we, like Dean said, we have to get the kids to school, and all the buses are sprayed at the end of each route, and sanitizer, masks. The air exchange, again, is a really important factor. So we're doing the best we can. If you know anybody that likes to drive a bus and likes kids, send them our way.
Never in my life did I think I'd be looking at buses to see if the windows were down. So, and then special thanks to Tom and to Carolyn for your service, and to all board members everywhere. It's important. I know it as a teacher, and we just appreciate all that you do for kids. So thank you.
Thank you, John. Appreciate it. All right, then the last slide that we have for you tonight is just a little update on the cleaning protocols. So the CDC issued new guidelines, and we're going to be following those. So I won't read those all to you, but you can see about the fogging and things that we are discontinuing, things that we are scaling back on, and things that we are continuing. So Mark Clark and his team have been doing a phenomenal job this entire year, keeping our buildings clean and keeping the air circulation at very healthy levels. So thanks to Mark and his team for all of that. And that brings us to the conclusion of this presentation. Any questions from the board?
Any questions or comments from the board? All right. Thank you very much for that presentation. It looks like we can move on to item C, update on discussions with the City of Verona on the PSLO contract and planning for the 21-22 school year.
Sure. Thank you, Noah. So Tamara, if you want to get to that, and board members, I sent this out to you also the same time I sent out the last presentation. So if you want to go ahead and get there, I'll toggle through the slides if you want to follow along also. So we wanted to give you a presentation. I'm going to share the mic this evening with Corey and Dr. Clardy and Pam Hammond, who I have to remind to text her to come on in. So we'll be sharing the podium here this evening, talking a little bit about the update. So what I'd like to do, Rachel, could you do me a favor? Could you text Pam and have her come on in? You did? Okay, thank you. So a little bit of historical background about the PSLO contract. So we've had a contract with the City of Verona for PSLO for at least the last 16 years. That's my length here. And before that, I don't know if it was 3 or 4 years before that, and it may have started as part of the DARE program. That part I couldn't quite go back that far. And historically, we've paid 60% of the contract in terms of the officer's salary and benefit package. Through the 16 years that I've been here, we've had a mix of 1- and 2-year agreements. In 2015-17, we increased the amount of PSLO time on campus by 30 minutes a day. What was happening was they were on, by union contract, they were on an 8-hour day, and it really didn't fit into our school day. So we needed an officer here while buses were unloading and at the end while students were leaving. So it was at that contract that we increased the time on campus 30 minutes a day to ensure coverage. So we paid for the overtime for those for that officer, and that was part of the agreement there. And then in the 17-18 contract, we started paying an additional $3 per hour to the officer as a means of recruiting and retaining officers. We've had, Pam, gosh, I was trying to think of how many PSLO officers we've had in my time here. I counted at least 6. So there may be more than that, at least 6. So there's been a considerable amount of turnover in that position. And turnover presents opportunities, it also presents challenges just in terms of continuity. So that was an effort to try to get somebody and keep them here. I would say this also, that one of the attractive features of the PSLO is the hours. As Corey, I'm looking at Corey, and it's possible to get on a police force and work your first several years the night shift because the day shifts are more coveted. And so the PSLO position obviously is a day shift. And so that was another recruiting and retention device there. So next slide then this is the most recent contract negotiations. So back in July of 2020, Corey Seffold presented an update on the security team and data to the Board of Education. And so Corey has been just an awesome addition to the VASD team, and all the expertise and knowledge that he brings to the table, and just his way of being too is in itself very calming. Then July 13th, the board approved the PSLO contract language, and that was sent to the city of Verona the very next day. And then on September 14th, again of 2020, Corey presented some alternatives to the PSLO to the Board of Education. Then late September, the city of Verona responded to the proposed contract. Various items were redlined in that contract. And then over the last few months, Corey and I have met with City Administrator Adam Sayer and Chief Bernie Coughlin to discuss the contract. So two of those dates are listed on there. We were scheduled to meet with the city administrator and the chief last Friday or last Thursday, one of the two. And then that was postponed at the request of the city administrator, asking to meet sometime after the school year had completed in June of 2021. So there is no successor contract to put before the board tonight. That's kind of the long and short of it. Lori Lebinsky is here to do a summary for the board of items that were redlined or added to the contract from the city. Lori, you want to take this? Hello, welcome.
Test, test. Excellent. I'm going to back up a little bit just for eyesight. There we go. So your PowerPoint basically contains what we've digested as the primary matters of disagreement. Obviously, there are a few others. I will call them minor in nature. These bullet points, which I will not read, are the major issues. And I would draw the board's attention to predominantly as I can digest it for you, the differences right now between what we had proposed and what the city had said in response are really a few major issues is what I would call them. Number one, the difference between having somebody full-time all year versus just the school year. The school district believed, based on a variety of things, that it was really necessary to have that full year coverage, not just from the standpoint of having students in our classrooms, but also from the perspective of ensuring we've got that necessary time for training, coordination with our security staff, working on policies, working on procedures, working on the things that frankly are pretty difficult to get done during the school year. The city rejected that. The other major thing is we had proposed that there just be some discussion between the police department, the PSLO, and the police department and administration prior to students being issued citations for conduct occurring on school property. And to be clear, we were never asking for, like, if a student does something on their free time or at night or on the weekends. We were talking about a student misbehaves in a classroom, for example, or does something on school property. We want to be part of that dialogue. Not that we would have the authority to veto a citation or that we would have the ability, because they retain the ultimate discretion. Law enforcement always does. But we wanted to have that dialogue to try to stop some cycles of what we've seen in the past. The third thing here is it relates to warrants on school property. And again, we said, if you're going to come into our property on school grounds and you're going to try to execute on a warrant, and admittedly, this doesn't happen all that often, okay? But when it does, unless you really have like what we under the law would consider exigent circumstances or an immediate threat, we want to be able to help you, police. Maybe bring that student down to the office, maybe cause that student less embarrassment. Just be part of that dialogue. They didn't feel that was appropriate. The fourth bullet point here relates to training. And so we recognized that the PSLO is one individual, right? Like they're not going to be here 24/7. People take vacations, people get sick. And so we just wanted, for those that might be backup to that PSLO, a little bit of extra training. 3 hours isn't a lot, I guess, in my view, of that professional development that would address kind of how to deal with students in terms of the incidents or issues that happen in our school buildings. Again, they rejected that. And then the last bullet point is, at least in my view, maybe in the views of others, one of the most major stumbling blocks, and that relates to the restorative justice practices. We had an entire section in our contract to address the restorative justice practices in the hopes that we could again break the cycle of some of the things, some of the statistical evidence we've seen over the years about what happens with students who get put into the criminal justice system, and how we can stop that, or at least how we can help stop that from continuing to be a problem. And that was just not something that the city police department agreed to. And I think Dean might have a little bit more of that in terms of his most recent conversations, but the bottom line is they weren't on board with that. And for those of us that have been working on this, those were some major stumbling blocks. The last bullet points here are just things that they added. Wearing body cameras, that's not necessarily a problem. You do get into issues concerning student privacy and educational issues, pupil records and those sorts of things, but maybe not as major. They also added language to establish, the coordination and communication between the PSLO and the district security officers. And again, that's not a major issue. We wanted to communicate, we wanted to coordinate, but it's got to go both ways. And then last but not least, they added language that, and this is a big one, so I'm going to just pause. I'm going to back up one step. Under law, under state statute, when we have in our school system a situation that mandates a report, by law, you have two possibilities, and it's an alternative. It's not an and, it's an or. You can either call social services or call law enforcement. And to the best of my knowledge, and I can't speak for what I don't know, but to the best of my knowledge, we have always complied with that law when we've been confronted those situations. And the police department wanted to, in essence, change that law by way of contract and say, you know what, it can be, you can certainly still call social services, but you always have to call us. And there are really good circumstances why you're going to want to call police in certain instances. There are really good circumstances where it might not be the first call you make. Without going into specifics and hypotheticals, I don't want to address that any further, but we felt it was inappropriate to, in essence, abrogate or change what we are required legally to do by way of contract to mandate that every phone call for potential abuse and neglect go to the police, because frankly, in our judgment, sometimes that's appropriate, and certainly safety issues. I want to be very clear. If there were safety issues and whatnot where we needed immediate law enforcement, of course we would call law enforcement. But there may be other more sensitive issues that may not be appropriate, at least in the school's judgment, in the district administration's judgment, and in my judgment, to call the police every single time. This list you have is, again, not all of the current disputes. I wouldn't call them disputes, just differences of view of what that contract should look like. But I believe they capture kind of the major sticking points that are really hampering the discussion going forward to kind of try to come to an agreement with the city and the police department. Happy to answer any questions. I think Dean might have a little more information solely on that, that one piece, because I know that's been the last two. In a slide before, Dean had mentioned that there were some conversations recently concerning some major issues. Dean, I don't know if you want to address that or not.
Sure. And Corey, actually, we want to hand this to Corey. Lori, thank you.
Oh, that's right.
Yep.
Corey was at those most recent meetings as well as Dean. I was not. So maybe Corey can address some of those major issues.
Right. There's actually quite a bit coming up on the restorative practice, restorative justice piece. But Corey, I'll let you take it away and advance the slide here.
Can I
Sure.
just quick question on the contractual language? Do you mind if I?
Yeah, please.
Okay. So as incident is defined or undefined in the contract that we received, could that be construed to mean a verbal altercation? You know, we're required then to report that to the police, or is it defined as, you know, specific types of incidents?
The answer to your question, it's the former, not the latter. So let's just take a hypothetical, right? Let's just say one student screams of profanity at another student. Okay, technically, and I'm not a law enforcement officer, that might be considered disorderly conduct. Okay, are we gonna wanna report to police every single time a student makes a swear word directed at another student? I don't think so, but that's what they are intending by their proposed changes. That's what they want. They want us to report. And look, I understand from a law enforcement perspective, you want to have safe schools. That we get that. We agree with that. But the notion that student misbehavior, which we all know has happened for centuries, that we're going to have to report to answer your question. Every single arguable infraction of the law to the city police department, that creates a problem. It creates a problem because what it does is it provides a mechanism where our students we're putting our students in the position of receiving citations for everyday student misbehavior. And that's a big stumbling block, at least in our view. It's a major stumbling block because we need our kids in school. We don't need our kids hung up in the justice system over these sorts of minor infractions that are typical student behavior. Now, again, safety issues, violence, that's a different animal. We're not talking about that. And to that extent, you know, obviously we're going to call the police when there are safety issues. And I want that to be very clear, but to be mandated by way of contract to call the police for every student infraction that could arguably give rise to a violation of the municipal code or the state statutes, gosh, we'd be doing that daily.
Yeah.
If not hourly, because students misbehave and they need to be taught right and wrong rather than being punished every single time. So hopefully I've answered that question.
So just to clarify, so it's safe to say that that provision could drastically increase the number of times that we would have to report what is considered in our discipline policies and code of conduct, et cetera, as just normal behavioral issues that schools address on a day-to-day basis, correct?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for that clarification.
That's the right slide. You want me to go ahead and start?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
As an alternative, I mean, you all have seen the effectiveness of our security team. We've saw these qualitative data from our students talking about how they like the security. Oh, we love the security team. They go to the security often. Whenever there's an issue, they go straight to the security team too. And so it's very preventative. We've also heard from our staff similar things, and we've heard from families. We also know from a previous presentation that there's a 93.75% decrease in police calls to the school for the year that security was higher. And that number is based on batteries, resisting arrest, disorderly conduct, and overall disturbances. the categories that I call my typical hot calls where police are going to be coming lights and sirens, typically is for these large disturbances and fights, right? 93.75% decrease. Very powerful number, but just also hearing from our community at large, students and families. So the point I'm getting to is that I think we can confidently say that given that evidence, we can successfully use an increase in expansion in our security team as an alternative to the PSLO. And what we like to do then is add a security officer to Badger Ridge. As I stated before, we have responded to Badger Ridge numerous times for major incidents, and we've been very effective. Every time we have responded, we've gotten there prior to the police and have been able to, put our own Verona way to that situation and ensure restorative practice for whatever that was. And then also add a security assistant to the high school to add to the team that's already there, already doing great work. And then to also, and Dr. Clarity will expand on this more, add a restorative justice coordinator, formerly known as a dean of students. And I'll just say this before Dr. Clarity speaks, is that primarily last year we hired Focus Interruption Coalition, and that's this outside community organization that came in and they did these very intense mediations with the families of these students that were in these disturbances. They did it at their homes. They did it in the communities. They did it in a rope course. It involved a lot of coordination to sit these parents and their students down to essentially talk. A lot of scheduling of with the principals, with the students. And so you can see how it became kind of like this tangled web. So one of the things that I noticed is that if we could have a person solely focusing on that, this restorative practice, that would be very helpful in moving forward. So that's another thing that we are proposing.
If we can go to the next slide, please. First, thank you, Corey, and thank you, Dean, for the beginning part of this presentation. Do you want to go to the next steps, Corey? Or
You can go ahead.
Okay. One more slide, please. Okay. So I want to make sure that we have a clear message around when we say restorative justice or restorative practices, what do we really mean? What are we communicating to our community about restorative justice? And you don't usually put quick talking point on a slide because that's usually for me, but in this case, I want us to be able to have this elevator speech that we all have a common language. When we say restorative justice, this is what every member of our cabinet, our new cabinet, and every board member of our community should know and understand about, so it doesn't become convoluted into something that is not. I can tell you something that it is not, though. Restorative justice is not a replacement for police and schools. It's just not. It can often get misconstrued to that. Restorative justice is really, if we start with the justice part, is how we honor the inherent worth of all of us, and it's through relationships, it's through building that community of relationships. The restorative component of it is how are we really addressing and describing an individual or group's dignity, worth, and interconnectedness. And having a community where that is nurtured and protected. And if something happens, if harm happens, we have a community where we can reestablish that in a ways that allows fully be members of the community. VASD, we are a full school community, and we are looking at restorative practice as a way of amplifying what's already a strong community so everyone has that access. Everyone has those benefits. Everyone understands that they're interconnected and their well-being is understood, appreciated, and valued. Next slide, please. So when we talk about restorative justice explicitly inside the educational system, we want to know that it's important that we recognize the culture of a school that grows out of people's beliefs and values. You can't know a person's beliefs and values unless you have that community and have the questions and talk and have those practices in play. And so what I want us to communicate as a cabinet, from district administration and leadership, and you as a board, is if somebody talks to you about restorative justice, that is really that you're cultivating a restorative culture within education. For you, that means that we're having and honoring and valuing beliefs that nurture. And again, if something happens, we have a routine and process that are established to lend itself to repair that harm and in the absence of punitive and exclusionary practices, exclusionary measures. And that is the key piece. It's not a replacement of. You don't wait for something to happen and say, okay, let's do a restorative justice as that to repair that piece. It's about the forward work, the planning, the understanding of differences, the understanding of how we're all interconnected. And on the next slide, we'll see how we're interconnected, those things that really matter in that interconnected mindset. Okay. So I'm never going to take credit for anyone else's work. This is through the shift of my HON. And we as a cabinet, and I'm encouraging you as a board as well, that we will study this through her work, Justice on Both Sides, and or books that are already ordered. But the key premise of this is that we're shifting mindsets that requires a complementary pedagogical stance that are consistent with the tenets and goals of restorative justice. In that time, we ask that each one of us recognize and affirm the importance of interconnectedness around the highlighted part, and we're not going to be scared to talk about it. It's history, race, justice, and language. When you work through those problems, that is when you have a community. That is when you have and understand the values of each person that walks our hallways. That's how you understand the value and appreciate each student that calls VASD home. And if we do that as a staff, as a community, and carry that and teach this to our children, that is when those values that we are looking for that will allow every student to be successful will come to life. Quickly over to the right, I want to talk about what matters. We know that the history is going to matter. We know that race matters, and we can't be scared to talk about it. We know that justice matters, and we know that language matters. But they can't happen separately. They have to happen through an interconnected mindset and understand that these correlate to each other in developing of the whole student, the whole staff, and the whole community. So I wanted to put this out there. So each time we talk about that, let's go back to these slides and have a common message about when we say restorative practice and VASD, this is what we're talking about. And this is how we will interact from henceforth moving forward. Question.
Well said, Tremaine. Let me back up a little bit. So board members, I think it'd be slide 8 for you all, and then we'll open it up for questions. So again, the city administrator asked to postpone the meeting that was to have happened last week to sometime after school is completed for the year, so sometime in June. And we'll schedule that meeting with Adam Sayer and the chief. And then schedule ongoing meetings throughout the 2021 school year. We'll hold the successor PSLO successor contract in abeyance pending those conversations. And in place of that, at least for the 2021-22 school year, proceed as we've outlined here tonight. So the restorative justice coordinator, 1 security personnel at the high school, and 1 at Badger Ridge. So questions?
Questions or comments from the board?
Last year, we talked a lot about when we were coming up with a contract, we didn't just pull things out of the sky. We sat down and we did research, right? We do what we always do. We look for information to help guide our path. And I think a lot of the things in our contract came from a national standard. And I appreciate all the things that the Verona Police Department does for our community and for our schools over the years. And I think we just have to work a little harder to find measures that are complementary instead of opposing in this contract. I don't think anybody here has an intention not to work with the Verona Police Department. We will rely on them for responding to instances over the years, like we always have. And we'll just keep working at it until we can come to an understanding.
Other thoughts, comments, questions from the board?
Thank you for the next steps. I think that looks exciting we have to be planning for 21, 22. I think this is a great step forward for that type of planning. And it's consistent with our strategic plan and keeping with our pillars. So I appreciate that work and look forward to seeing how this grows. Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions, comments from the board? Well, I certainly will echo what was mentioned by Amy and Meredith. I think I've made these comments previously about the contract that we've received back from the city. Certainly one item that in my mind needs to be included in any proposed discussion is language pertaining to restorative justice practices, and certainly one item that in my mind is just something that I will not entertain is compulsory language that will further turn student behavior into behavior that is policed. So that's just my opinion on the contract in general. I know, as Amy said, it is critical that we continue to work with our local police departments because we know our students will interact with law enforcement, whether it is inside our schools or outside. And we all share the same goal of ensuring that our students are safe and have the best educational experience possible. And one thing that certainly I've carried with me throughout these conversations and this process is our commitment to continuous improvement, which we should all be striving for. And I know it's our governance model here as a district. And so anything that is stagnant or backwards, that is not constantly about improving our service to our students, I just simply find unacceptable. So I appreciate the work that's gone into having these conversations, and I certainly appreciate the work that's been done to develop these alternatives that we necessarily have to proceed with. So thank you all. Any other questions or comments from the board before we proceed? Okay.
Can you hear me without an echo?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
Okay. Just don't want to create too much feedback. I just had a quick question for Corey, and it's about the addition of the middle school position.
I'm listening.
So I know that position's particularly for Badger Ridge. Corey, do you foresee that position also having some time at Savannah Oaks?
No, not initially. My decision for that position was really based on need at the time. Would it be a good idea in the future to expand to Savannah Oaks? My plan for the future is to continue the expansion of the security in general to more of a security department, service in every school. But obviously, we have to get there over time, gradually. And so Badger Ridge at this point in time has the most needs, and that's based on the number of responses that the security team had to Badger Ridge.
Excuse me, excellent question. And Corey covered it exactly right, utilizing data. It really was a data-driven decision. We also are looking at data-driven decisions that promote fiscal responsibility. So when we look at both hand in hand, we look at Badger Ridge as definitely the right resources. That doesn't mean that we won't continue to monitor data for future needs, but we want to balance the responsibility to our community as well as far as our budget, and look at data sets to ensure that we have the right security in the right spot. And Corey has done a wonderful job in analyzing that.
Okay, thanks for that clarification. I'm looking forward to seeing how that position at the middle school level, seeing that would be new for us, helps us, and it helps our students really understand restorative justice. I know restorative justice is a big concept, I think, for high school or middle schooler to wrap their head around, but I think it's really a great opportunity to have that, introduced into that environment and have students and families better acquainted with it. So having it at the middle school level is of interest to me, and I'm just looking forward to seeing how that unfolds.
Thank you, Christina. Any other questions or comments from the board? All right, hearing none, I think that concludes that agenda item, unless there's anything else to add. Dean? Okay.
Nothing else.
We can move on to superintendent's report.
And I have no report tonight.
Okay. We can move on to future agenda items and meeting dates. Any questions or comments from the board on those dates?
Just a note, so the next board meeting date on May 3rd, we are going to have our district-wide art students come back. So we're going to bring back some student visitors, and they'll come in here, and a presentation will be similar to past, different obviously, but more or less similar. So I'm looking forward to having kids back in these meetings.
Excellent. That's very exciting. Any other comments, questions from the board on the future agenda items or meeting dates? All right, hearing none, we can move on to committee reports. CIA.
I'll speak on behalf of Christina if she doesn't mind. We have not met.
Okay. Finance, BG&T.
We have not met.
Personnel and policy.
We have not met.
Okay. And that concludes our committee reports. And now we can move into the swearing in of new board members. So let's see here. How would we like to proceed with this?
So Carolyn is a clerk. So Carolyn, as the clerk's duties is to swear in the new and re-elected board members. So maybe start with Meredith first, I guess.
Sure. Do you want us to stand up or?
I think you can stay right where you're at.
Okay.
I think that'd be okay.
All right. So you ready, Meredith?
I am.
Raise your right hand. I, Meredith Steer Christensen,
I, Meredith Steer Christensen,
having been elected or appointed to the office of Verona Area School Board Member, Portion 1,
having been elected or appointed to the office of Verona Area School Board Member, Portion 1, outside cities,
swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States
swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Wisconsin,
and the Constitution of the State of Wisconsin,
and will faithfully and impartially discharge the duties
and will faithfully and impartially discharge the duties
of said office to the best of my ability.
of said office to the best of my ability.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations. You are elected again.
All right, Tamara, do you have the hard copies of the other oath for Jen and John?
I can try and break it up slow so it's easy. I'll make small.
You'll make small?
I'll make
Okay.
small.
And if you two would like to approach the
Yeah,
microphone.
Jen, do you want to just speak into the mic?
The fact that that was the lead-in of make it small for Jen. I guess, right? Oh, thanks, Corey. That's all right. Thank you.
All right. Can you raise your right hand? All right. I, Jennifer Murphy,
I, Jennifer Murphy,
having been elected
having been elected
to the office of Verona Area School Board at Large,
to the office of Verona Area School Board at Large,
swear that I will support the Constitution
swear that I will support the Constitution
of the United States
of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Wisconsin,
and the Constitution of the State of Wisconsin,
and will faithfully and impartially discharge the duties of said office
discharge the duties of said office
to the best of my ability.
to the best of my ability.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
All right. Here, raise your right hand. I, John Porco,
I, John Porco,
having been elected to the office
having been elected to the office
of Verona Area School Board Member at Large,
of Verona Area School Board Member at Large,
swear that I will support
swear that I will support
the Constitution of the United States
the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Wisconsin,
and the Constitution of the State of Wisconsin,
and will faithfully and impartially
and will faithfully and impartially
discharge the duties of said office
discharge the duties of said office
to the best of my ability.
to the best of my ability.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Congratulations to our new board members. I'm actually going to have you approach the microphones again. You'll have your first vote in just a moment as new board members. So if you would approach the microphones, that would be great. And thank you, Carolyn, for running us through that process.
And no, if I can, just I think this is a review here. And so I want to do this. If I'm wrong, people correct me. So Yana will be sworn in. So as the top vote getter for the at-large, so she assumes a 3-year position. She was originally filling in for Debbie Biddle, who left office. So she'll have a 3-year term. Jen, I believe, then as the next top vote getter, will have a 3-year term. And then John is finishing out 2 years on Debbie's term. Is that correct? Okay. All right. Thank you.
We'll just go through that. All right, so we're going to adjourn to closed session and we'll do a roll call vote. So I'll call your name and that will be your time to say aye or no. But with that, I will accept a motion to adjourn to closed session under Wisconsin statutes 19.85, parent 1, parent E, to A, deliberate or negotiate the purchase of public property, the investing of public funds, or conducting other specified business whenever bargaining reasons require a closed session regarding potential wage settlements for VAEA.
So moved.
Second.
There's been a motion from Meredith and a second from Amy. Are there any questions or comments before we begin the roll call vote? Okay, hearing none, we will begin with Amy.
Aye.
Meredith.
Aye.
Jennifer.
Aye.
John.
Aye.
I'll vote aye as well. And Christina, if we can hear you.
Aye.
Excellent. And we have adjourned to closed session. Thank you all very much.